We're dealing with a lot of question marks at the running back position in week 2. We've got some injuries. We got some usage in week 1 that was a little perplexing, and our lineups need to be set before Thursday night football. Hit the like button. Let's dive into my top 30 running backs for week 2. Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? It's Thursday, which means it's rankings day, and I've got my top 30 running backs here for you, plus the first few guys that are just on the outside looking in. And with some question marks this week due to injuries, we really need to be on top of our game, so hit that like button, subscribe if you're new here, and I think it's time that we jump into my top 30 running backs. Number 1 this week, Christian McCaffrey against the LA Rams. He was everything that we needed in week 1. He had the big plays. He had the volume. And the one thing as well, even when San Francisco went up, it wasn't like Elijah Mitchell came in and got a ton of volume after that. They are willing to keep Christian McCaffrey on the field as much as they can. Saquon Barkley with a down performance in week 1. Some of that was game script. But we expect him to bounce back at Arizona in week 2. Hopefully this entire New York Giants offense bounces back. But with the way Daniel Jones played last week, I wouldn't be shocked if they really rely on Saquon Barkley this week to carry the majority of the workload. Nick Chubb at number 3 going up against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh got absolutely shredded by Christian McCaffrey last week. I highly anticipate Nick Chubb running for another 100 yards this week as well. Ramondre Stevenson all the way up to number 4 for me. Miami allowed a plethora of rushing yards and touchdowns last week in their game against the LA Chargers. For that reason, we have got to go with Ramondre Stevenson up to number 4. His usage in the first half last week kind of threw some people off, but in the second half, you realized, hey, he's still the guy here in New England. Also, he didn't fumble the ball like Zeke did. Bijan Robinson at number 5 versus Green Bay. Now, it looks like for the time being anyway, Bijan's really going to make his mark in the passing game. He's going to get yards on the ground. He's going to get rushing attempts. That's going to happen. He has more upside than Tyler Algier. And this week, going up against Green Bay, I definitely believe that they're going to have to utilize him a little bit more in the passing game to get rid of that football a little bit quicker. And that's why I've got him all the way up here. Travis Etienne going up against Kansas City last week he had a few decent runs against Indianapolis last week, and then he finally rips off that huge run there at the end of the game for the touchdown to seal that victory for Jacksonville. Give me some Travis Etienne this week against Kansas City. Jahmyr Gibbs last week didn't get a ton of touches against Kansas City, but he looked very explosive with the ones that he did. He had some big gains there. David Montgomery still scored a rushing touchdown as well. Travis Etienne is the guy to own in Jacksonville. Derrick Henry last week. Now, he was pulled off the field quite a bit, a lot more than what people were anticipating. Some of that had to do with game script. I've got him lower this week because it could happen again against a very good Los Angeles Chargers offense. If the Tennessee Titans can't keep the game close and they find themselves behind as the game wears on, do not be surprised if we see a little bit more Tajay Spears. Now, part of the reason for that is I think Tennessee is wanting to keep Derrick Henry as healthy as possible, so they're going to end up looking at it and say, hey, if we're in a situation where we're just behind or we're playing catch up, let's get Spears on the field a little bit more so we're not running Derrick Henry ragged. Josh Jacobs at number 8 going up against Buffalo. Now, Buffalo gave up some big runs last week, a couple of decent runs to Dalvin Cook, but those huge runs to Breece Hall. Josh Jacobs is going to be a guy that he'll definitely have the volume this week, but we're hoping for those big plays. I would go higher with him, but we need to have those big plays for him to make his week. Tony Pollard at number 9 going up against the New York Jets. Now, he did get a couple of touchdowns in that blowout win against the Giants last week, but this Jets offense is absolutely no joke. The hope is this week is that Tony Pollard gets a little bit of an uptick in the passing game to help out with some of that upside, because running the football on the ground, I mean, this is probably going to end up being a defensive battle, but knowing that Tony Pollard is the guy and that he can help in the passing game as well, that's one of the reasons why I've got him in here right now. I just don't think his ceiling can go much higher than number 9. 9 is like where his ceiling is at for me, his floor being more along the lines of a high-end RB2. Now I'm going to have Austin Eckler at number 10. As of right now, he has not practiced yet this week, so we're going to keep an eye on that. That's the reason why I've got it considerably lower. Now, if for some reason they were to come out and say, yeah, he's going to play this week, he's not going to have any limitations, he's going to be just fine, then Austin Eckler is going to shoot up to number 4 for me. But until that happens, until we get that type of confirmation, I'm going to be a lot lower on him because he could maybe not even end up playing. But as of right now, it looks like that they're going to try to get him on the field, but they don't know if that's going to happen. Kind of the same thing for Aaron Jones right now. Aaron Jones is limited right now at practice. Don't know if he's going to be good to go at Atlanta or not, and that's why I've got him also considerably lower at number 11. It's another thing that we're going to have to keep an eye on as the week progresses. And of course, make sure you tune into the live show on Saturday night and Sunday morning, and we'll make sure that we keep you updated on all of this. Now, Kenneth Walker I've got here at number 12. And there are some concerns about this ranking because they are going to be missing, they is in Seattle, both of their tackles this week. Their starting left tackle and right tackle do not appear to be ready to go for Sunday at Detroit. Now, if that happens, Kenneth Walker probably drops a little bit lower for me, but knowing that he still has big playability and knowing that this Detroit defense, every once in a while, last year we saw it still towards the end of the season, could give up a big run on the ground. I'm just going to keep them kind of in this area because I'm sure Seattle, given how poorly their offense played last week, unless Detroit absolutely dominates them and goes up by a couple of touchdowns, Seattle is going to look to keep the game balanced and keep the ball away from that Detroit offense. Also, given how loud it's going to be in Detroit on Sunday, they're probably also going to try to control the game on the ground to take the crowd out of it. I'm going to put Jahmyr Gibbs at number 13. Now, I know I had him here last week. He didn't touch that. Detroit has already said that they're going to continue to try and work through getting him more touches. And I would love to see that. I would love to see him get more touches. But how long is it going to take to build up to a full workload? What does a full workload even look like for Jahmyr Gibbs in his rookie season? There's still a lot of question marks around that. But given how explosive he looked last week against Kansas City, it's not going to take many touches for him to get to number 13 anyway. James Cook going up against Las Vegas. I've got him considerably higher this week as well than I did last week. Last week was a tough matchup going up against the Jets. And he still looked pretty good at times last week. He didn't have any huge plays, but he was still getting a majority of the touches and was on the field a majority of the time. James Cook is absolutely a guy that I'm just waiting to blow up, and this week against Las Vegas could bring that opportunity. Joe Mixon going up against Baltimore. This is also going to be a tougher matchup. Baltimore's defense looks good right now. They're going to be able to stand up Joe Mixon at the line every once in a while. We're going to have to hope that that passing game looks a lot better this week so they can get more balanced and open up the run game and maybe get Joe Mixon in a couple of holes there, here and there. David Montgomery at number 16. Now, last week he finished a lot higher than Jahmyr Gibbs did, but he's touchdown dependent in my opinion. He's still going to get a decent amount of volume. He only averaged 3.5 yards per carry last week. And maybe as he becomes a little bit more familiar with the offense in terms of like the gameplay on the field, and he kind of gets a little bit more comfortable in the scheme, I hope that picks up a little bit for him. But he's going to lose some touches to Jahmyr Gibbs over the next couple of weeks if his efficiency doesn't get much better. Now, before you all panic and start screaming at me about Breece Hall at number 17, first and foremost, I have him higher than the consensus, so you're welcome. For those of you, though, that are like, oh, Breece Hall's got to be a must start, he's a top 10 player, I want you to keep something in mind. Last week, he ran for 127 total yards. Well, if you take away the 26-yard run that he had to open up the game on offense, and then if you take away the 83-yard run that he had after that, he only averaged 2.25 yards per carry on his other 8 carries. He had 2 big plays. It was literally 2 plays that made his night. He does not get free on those 2 plays, and we're not talking about Breece Hall the same way that we are today. Keep that in mind. Be very cautious when it comes to playing Breece Hall moving forward. Is he going to get more touches? Absolutely he will. Is he explosive? Absolutely he is. But he's going to get a very good Dallas front this week that could potentially shut him and Dalvin Cook down. James Conner going up against the New York Giants. I've got him at number 18. The Giants last week, again, got shredded by Tony Pollard, but they were already down. James Conner, for me, is a guy that is probably going to be really safe this week, even if his floor isn't super high. I've got DeAndre Swift at number 19. I'm keeping an eye on this matchup. We know at this point, Kenneth Gainwell is not going to play. So DeAndre Swift should be the guy, considering the fact that Rashad Penny was a healthy scratch last week. But DeAndre Swift only saw 2 touches last week. So are we expecting him to go from 2 touches in that role right there with Kenneth Gainwell to all of a sudden like 25 touches? I highly doubt that. We're going to put him up here at number 19 because he should be the lead back. But I'm just waiting for Philadelphia to pull one out from under us, and all of a sudden Boston Scott ends up being the guy on Thursday Night Football. Najee Harris at number 20 going up against Cleveland. Pittsburgh and Najee Harris need to find a way to make him more efficient. Until that happens, I'm very concerned about the type of upside he's going to be able to offer you, especially going up against a Cleveland defense that completely shut down the high-powered Cincinnati offense last week. Now, Cleveland's defense didn't have everything to do with that, but going up against Pittsburgh now, they have an opportunity to start 2-0 and really cement the start of their season against a division rival. Tyler Algier going up against Green Bay. This is a guy that I'm not going to put too high in my rankings every single week, but given the workload he saw in week 1, if he sees it again against Green Bay, even if he doesn't score the 2 touchdowns, he could still be a low-end RB2 for us. Alexander Mattison at number 2 against Philadelphia, another guy that should get the volume like Najee Harris, but unfortunately, he's a guy that just isn't super efficient right now. A tough Philadelphia defense, he's going to have to bring it this week. Dameon Pierce going up against Indianapolis. Now, Indianapolis last week, for the most part, did a pretty good job against the run. Travis Etienne had some decent runs, but he had that huge one at the end of the game, and that's kind of what I'm looking for from Dameon Pierce this week, is can he break off a couple of big runs? If he can do that, even if he doesn't score a touchdown, he should be in this area. Miles Sanders at number 24 going up against New Orleans. Miles Sanders is going to be a guy that all season long is probably going to get you right between 70 and 90 total yards per game, but it's the touchdowns. Is Carolina going to be able to get into the red zone enough to let Miles Sanders score some touchdowns? That's going to be a thing, because Miles Sanders isn't a guy that I look at and say, hey, he's ripping off 15, 20, 25, 30-yard carries. I'm just not seeing a whole lot of those from Miles Sanders. And if he's not doing that, then they need to get into the red zone for him to score some touchdowns. But Carolina's offense is going to continue to have some issues going up against New Orleans. That's going to be one of those tough matchups where Miles Sanders just doesn't have the upside for me. Isaiah Pacheco at number 25. Now, his workload last week wasn't as much as that we would have liked to see. However, he did get a little bit more work in the passing game, but my fear is with how rough things looked in the passing game with the wide receivers last week, Jerick McKinnon was the go-to guy for Patrick Mahomes down the stretch last season. Patrick Mahomes was looking for Jerick McKinnon in the passing game quite a bit. So given the struggles that they had last week, a lot of people said it in my start and sit video. What am I missing here? Pacheco, he was the guy in the passing game. That's all right that he was the guy in the passing game last week. I'm looking to see if he's still the guy in the passing game moving forward, or if they try to get back to some of the things that they did last year with Jerick McKinnon. Jamal Williams at number 26 going up against Carolina. He did not look good last week. He did not. And Carolina's defense is still a pretty decent defense, and they could still help control the game up front a little bit. Jamal Williams is going to have to be a guy that's going to have to find the end zone this week. Brian Robinson Jr., I would love to have put him a lot higher this week, but I just couldn't. Denver's defense is very good. Brian Robinson should still see the majority of the touches in this backfield, but once again, we're going to find this situation where he just doesn't quite have the upside given the matchup. Samaje Perine at number 28 versus Washington. I definitely foresee Perine getting worked into the passing game a little bit this week. Washington's defense was very underrated last season. They didn't probably look as good last week as they could have going up against Arizona. So we'll see what happens this week against Denver. But Samaje Perine, he's still going to probably see a bulk of the running back touches as Javonte Williams continues to work his way back from his knee injury last last year. Rashad White, he might be the guy in this offense in terms of volume, but I'm sorry, his efficiency right now is absolutely garbage, and he was bad last year in terms of efficiency as well. It doesn't matter how much volume you get if you're only picking up 2 to 3.5 yards per carry. If you're not breaking tackles, if you're not making people miss, if you can't do those things, it doesn't matter how much volume you're getting. And right now, Rashad White is getting the volume, but he's not doing the other things to help his upside. Raheem Mostert, we're going to keep an eye on him this week. He is currently questionable right now going up against New England. That is going to be a tougher matchup, but we've got him right here at the 30 spot, just looking in at the top 30. Let's move into my first few guys that are out. Taking a look at a guy like Javonte Williams right now. Javonte Williams, he's going to continue to get some touches. He didn't look as explosive last week, which I completely understand. It's understandable if he didn't look explosive last week. We're going to continue to see if he's going to build that up, though, as they go. So Javonte Williams, he's going to continue to get touches, but until some of that explosiveness gets back, he's not going to be the start that we would like him to be. Dalvin Cook, I've got Breece Hall higher because we saw it with Breece Hall. He can rip off those huge plays. But going up against this really tough Dallas defense, not having the passing game to kind of keep them balanced, for me, I'm going to take some of the Breece Hall upside that he could potentially offer with big runs, and I'm definitely going to take those over Dalvin Cook. A.J. Dillon right now is on the outside looking in because we're waiting to hear about more about Aaron Jones. If Aaron Jones misses this week or ends up being very limited, A.J. Dillon will make his way into the top 30. Does he go as high as Aaron Jones at number 11? Absolutely not, but I'd be willing to move him up to number 20 in front of Najee Harris. Gus Edwards, I'd like to move him into the top 30 as well. I do anticipate him being the guy between the 20s, but the guy from the 20 to the goal line could still end up being a Justice Hill. Melvin Gordon could end up being on the active roster this week. Lots of different things could end up happening with that backfield. So I'm trying not to get too crazy with Gus Edwards. Definitely a potential flex for you, but I think his upside is very limited. Kyren Williams looked better than Cam Akers last week, and Kyren Williams even outsnapped Cam Akers in the first half. To me, it is clear that Kyren Williams is coming for Cam Akers' job. But when you get San Francisco, that is not the time for us to say Kyren Williams is the guy to go to this week. Now, the good thing about Williams is that we could see him a little bit more in the passing game than what we would see Cam Akers. And going up against San Francisco, that's going to allow some opportunity for him to see some targets, but not enough for me to put him in the top 30. And then Joshua Kelly, the last one I'm going to talk about real quick. And once again, it has to do with Austin Eckler. If Austin Eckler is limited this week, then yeah, Josh Kelly is going to be probably a potential top 30 start. I probably wouldn't move him much more than like number 29 over Rashad White. He would have to score some touchdowns. We saw Tennessee do pretty well against the run game last week. If Austin Eckler were to completely miss, then I'd be willing to move him up into like the same area that I said with A.J. Dillon already. Kind of in that number 20 type area is where I'd be willing to go with Joshua Kelly. But ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. My top 30 running backs plus a few guys that are just on the outside looking in. We'll continue to update you all with the injury news and things going on this week. Don't forget, our live show on Saturday night and Sunday morning is really where we're going to do a lot of that updating to get you ready for the season. Good luck with your Thursday night matchups, though. If you've got any players going tonight, hopefully they get you all the points in the world, so at least you're feeling comfortable heading into Sunday. But for right now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to get out of here. Peace out. Stay safe. Stay healthy. And I'll catch you all on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.